Hello, college sports fans. This matchup practically sells itself. A top five showdown between two ultimate titans of college football, teams that have won multiple national championships of the past decade and so forth. And now they're going to meet in the regular season once again in Tuscaloosa. It's number two Georgia at number four Alabama. Let's get right into this one. Super excited. This is going to be an amazing, amazing game. There's so much history between these two teams. And yes, even though technically this isn't a rivalry like the intense rivalries that Alabama has with Auburn and Tennessee and LSU, or the intense rivalries Georgia has with Auburn and Florida and even Tennessee a little bit as well. This is still a strong, strong rivalry in the South, considering how often they've played each other in the postseason, and just feels like these two teams are the teams that have, for the better part, dominated the SEC over the last couple of decades. Now, to talk about the all-time history real quick, I'll start it off with that just to really set the stage for this epic, epic matchup, and then we'll get into this season's edition. So, Alabama leads the all-time series 43 to 26 with four ties. And they've been playing each other since 1895. So this is still a series that goes way back, way back. There were many, many, many memorable classics in this series. I could have said even more games than the games that I picked here, but the ones I wanted to mention were 1994, Alabama coming back and beating Georgia 29 to 28 in near improbable fashion. 2007, Georgia winning 26 to 23 with some superstars such as Matthew Stafford at quarterback, and this was Nick Saban's first year as Alabama's head coach, so that was an absolute classic. 2012, one of the most iconic matchups between these two, the 2012 SEC championship that really began the postseason rivalry for these two teams. Alabama and Georgia were both in the top three. The winner would go on to play number one overranked Notre Dame and overrated Notre Dame in the national championship game. And of course, whoever won this game would basically crush Notre Dame. So this was really the de facto national championship game. And Alabama won 32 to 28, an absolute classic. Georgia messed up right at the end, threw a pass inbounds. Aaron Murray hit his guy. He fell down. Clock ran down. Game was over. They could have had a couple shots to the end zone. Who knows? They still might not have gotten it anyways. But you wonder what could have been back then. 2018 CFP National Championship. Alabama won 26 to 23 after pulling Jalen Hurts out for a poor performance in the first half and putting in the freshman Tua Tagovailoa, who led the team down, threw a game-winning touchdown pass to Devontae Smith, who of course was a future Heisman Trophy winner. Smith was hardly even active in that team's season. That was only like his fifth or sixth catch all season, but of course it was the most important catch of the year, winning the national championship. 2018 SEC title. This was a rematch of the national championship in the SEC championship. Georgia once again had a huge lead. Saban pulled Tua Tagovailoa, put in Jalen Hurts, so a reverse of what happened technically earlier that year in January, and Alabama won 35 to 28. And then finally, 2022 national championship, Georgia won 33 to 18, ending a 7-game losing streak to Alabama and winning their first national championship in 41 years. They finally did it. So that was an epic game. 2023 SEC title last year. Alabama winning 27 to 24 despite being number 8 in the country. Georgia was number 1 in the country. And the Crimson Tide prevented a Georgia three-peat since, of course, that year was the last year of the 4-team playoff. Obviously, if it was this year, Georgia still would have gotten into the college football playoff. And who knows, probably could have gone all the way and three-peated. So you wonder what could have been in that scenario as well. So lots of instant classics, but as you can see, Alabama has won the vast majority of those. Both teams are coming off of a bye week, which is also going to make this game a lot better. Both of them can get rested, they can get healthy. Georgia can figure out their running back situation, which is going to be key for this game. So that's huge that they're coming off of a bye week. Let's talk about the offenses comparatively because really, as of right now, there has been no comparison. But I did want to say Georgia has faced slightly tougher competition in Clemson and Kentucky. They played Tennessee Tech as well in the middle of those, and Tennessee Tech is absolutely horrible. But those other two teams are pretty solid. Alabama, on the other hand, has played Western Kentucky, who's okay, solid in their conference. They played Southern Florida, similar situation, solid in their conference, and Wisconsin on the road, who's okay. They're a solid but not that great Big Ten team this season. So I'd say Georgia's faced slightly tougher competition, but Alabama is still averaging 49 points per game compared to Georgia's 31.7. And also, Alabama's had a way more balanced attack than Georgia's. The Bulldogs, for once, it seems like every year they have amazing running backs and an amazing running back depth. For once, Georgia can't seem to get the ground game going like Alabama can. Jalen Milroe, and I know there's a lot of great players. Cam Ward at Miami is another player that comes to mind when you think of the Heisman Trophy as of right now. But I really think Milroe should be the front runner. I'm so serious. He's got 590 passing yards, 8 passing touchdowns, plus 156 rushing yards with 6 rushing touchdowns. He's only got 1 turnover, which is a fumble. So he's been extremely efficient on both the air and the ground. And then his supporting cast, very good. Running back Jam Miller has 265 yards, 3 touchdowns. Justice Haynes has 165 yards and 2 touchdowns. So those two running backs have been very good. And then the freshman wide receiver, Ryan Williams, going crazy. Everybody keeps talking about these freshmen, him and Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State, another great wide receiver. There's a lot of super talented freshman receivers this year, and Williams may possibly be the best. Of course, Smith is doing his thing, but Williams has 285 yards and 4 touchdowns as a true freshman, and he was only 17 years old. Jeremy Bernard has 125 yards and a touchdown as more the veteran receiver of this team, but Ryan Williams is clearly the go-to guy. And on defense, Alabama once again has a fantastic defense led by Deontay Lawson, who has 21 tackles, and then Keon Sabb, the transfer from Michigan, who's coming off of winning a national championship, has 11 tackles, 2 interceptions, and then Malachi Moore, who's fantastic in the secondary, has 16 tackles. So the defense also still very good, even though it's Kalen DeBoer and not Nick Saban. He's kept that vintage Alabama defense. Georgia, on the other hand, let's just talk about them. They had a really rough game on the road at night against Kentucky. And once again, they're going on the road at night in this environment as well. Georgia committed 9 penalties against Kentucky and got dominated in the time of possession. But fortunately for them, Carson Beck made the crucial throws he had to make in those situations. He currently has 680 yards and 7 passing touchdowns, plus 55 yards and a rushing touchdown with no turnovers. So Carson Beck, he hasn't been the most brilliant. He had super high expectations. He was the Heisman frontrunner to start the season, but he's still been very efficient and also has not made any crucial mistakes. Now, the running back situation. It's been rough for Georgia. For once, it's been rough. Trevor Etienne, who they stole away from their arch rival, the Florida Gators, has not been much of a factor, but this bye week came at a good time. He could finally be getting healthy because the moment he got back onto the field, following having to not play in the first couple of games due to some issue, he hurt his shoulder and immediately had to go back out. He could be healthy and ready to go, but also their freshman phenom, Nate Frazier, has been okay with 113 yards and a touchdown. His best game is still against Clemson, though. But at wide receiver, they've got a lot of great options, and with a great signal caller throwing them the ball, that's been the key part of their offense. Dominic Lovett has 155 yards and a touchdown. Arian Smith has 142 yards and a touchdown. Dylan Bell has just under 100 yards and a touchdown. And then Colby Young, I think he has around 80 yards, but he's got 2 touchdowns. So there's a lot of different weapons to choose from. Surprisingly, the tight ends have Delp and Eurosec have not been very involved in this passing offense. So that's been something interesting to watch. On defense, lots of great superstars once again with Georgia. Smail Munden has 12 tackles, Malachi Starks, 11 tackles and an interception. AJ Bolden, 11 tackles. Dan Jackson, 9 tackles. Jalen Walker, 11 tackles. So they're good at all the levels. Most of their great play has been in the secondary as well, and has been key to shutting down some solid quarterback play that we've otherwise have seen. And then Peyton Woodring has been a great kicker. He's been perfect so far, whereas Graham Nicholson, who Alabama stole away from Miami, Ohio, after he was the kicker of the year last year, he missed his only field goal attempt so far, so he hasn't really been tested too much. But Nicholson, they haven't really been trusting him as much as you would think. Right now, Georgia is a 2-point favorite. And I'm just going to be honest about this one, guys. Obviously, this game is a toss-up. It's a matchup of two elite caliber teams, arguably the two most talented teams, top to bottom, in the entire country. When you look at how the recruiting rankings have been over the last several years, these two teams are almost always number one and number two in almost every single year. So you couple that with the other talents that they have, the coaching staffs that they have. I think Kalen DeBoer and Kirby Smart are literally the two best coaches in college football right now. In my opinion, DeBoer is actually the slightly better coach with what he's done with Washington and other previous schools before that. But obviously, you can make the case either way. To me, they're number one and number two, regardless of which way you go currently in the country. And Georgia, though, they showed a lot of concerns on the road against Kentucky, and I'm still worried about the Dogs' ground game, especially when Alabama does have players like Deontay Lawson, does have a solid front seven that can shut down the run. And I'm worried they'll be too reliant on Carson Beck through the air. And even though Beck is fantastic, Alabama does have the secondary to match that. They're at home. There's a ton of energy with that team, and they're highly motivated in the fact that Georgia is the team that's favored by 2. And see, the thing is, that's also where I'm basing my prediction is whichever team was going to be favored slightly, I was probably going to pick the other team because it's easier to motivate yourself when you can call yourself the underdog. Alabama technically is the underdog. Therefore, I think Alabama is going to win this game by 3 points. They're going to be slightly more motivated than Georgia, just like we saw in the SEC championship game last year, where Alabama had to win to get into the CFP, whereas Georgia maybe felt like they didn't have to win, and then they turned out to be wrong. So there you guys go. That is my prediction for this game. This is the Bunley game of the week. So keep watching because we're going to have Bunley come on in just a second to have her prediction for this game, which is super exciting. And she'll have to pick between the strawberry representing Georgia because it's a slightly brighter red, or the red pepper representing Alabama because it's more of a crimson color. Thank you guys so much for watching, and here comes Bunley's prediction here on the College Sports Superfan. Here's Miss Bunley in her new home, her new little castle here, ready to choose between Georgia and Alabama. Here are the two choices. The strawberry represents Georgia, and the red bell pepper represents Alabama. Oh, Miss Bunley, here it is. Oh my gosh, which one are you gonna pick? Which one will Miss Bunley pick? Is she thinking Georgia? Is she thinking the Georgia Bulldogs are gonna win this game? Oh my gosh. She's thinking about it. Oh my gosh. She has to think about it because she's so smart. Oh my goodness. She's now thinking maybe Alabama's gonna win. Oh my, she chooses Alabama after thinking about it for a long time. Wow, this was definitely the most difficult pick for Bunley to make, but in this instance, she has picked Alabama to beat Georgia at home.